Welcome to Doing Time with Joe. I'm your host, Joe Baker, back with another episode for y'all. In this episode, we're going to be talking about opioid addiction and how it affects the families. I got a special guest today that I'm going to be talking to about this. His name is Darren Hawkins. Before we get started, I want to let you know about a new initiative that I'm doing called the Doing Time with Joe Contributor. It's basically where anybody out there, no matter what profession you're in, that hasn't anything that they want to say about crime, gang members, how crime has affected your family, if you're a victim of crime, anything like that, I'm encouraging you to make an audio or video clip for at least 5 minutes, no more than 30 minutes. Email it to me at doingtimewithjoet@gmail.com, and I'm going to put that up on my podcast. Remember, y'all, the goal of everything that I try to do is to discourage crime by telling the truth about the lifestyle, okay? So with that said, let's jump back into the episode. Today, like I said, I'm talking to a young man named Darren Hawkins. Darren, go ahead and introduce yourself.
Hello, my name is Darren Hawkins. I'm 45 and I'm from Hendersonville, Tennessee.
From Hendersonville, Tennessee, right?
Yes, sir.
And we're going to be talking to him today about opioids and how it affects the person and the family members of individuals involved in that particular addiction. It's a bad thing. And I just wanted to talk about this so that people can really understand how it affects families and on a personal level. You know what I mean? So, Darren, you've been incarcerated for how long?
Almost 18 months.
Almost 18 months. How many times have you been locked up?
Probably 25 plus.
Probably 25 plus off and on.
Yes, sir.
Yeah, that's it. Okay. You ain't got to call me sir, but I appreciate the respect. But look, this is what we're going to do. I want to ask you something, man. Me and you talked extensively about, you know, your family and the things that you've been through, and I want to talk about that a little bit. But before we get into that, let's talk a little bit about your past drug usage, okay? What was your drug of choice?
My first drug of choice was marijuana, alcohol, acid, LSD, cocaine.
Yeah.
And then it led to heroin, fentanyl, and Suboxone, anything that I can get under the influence with.
Okay, let me ask you a question then. How old were you when you first started using drugs? And that drug you say was what, marijuana and alcohol? So how old were you when you first indulged?
Around about 14 or 15 years old.
14 or 15-year-olds. Do you remember why you started using?
Because of the people that I was hanging around with.
People you were hanging around with. That's important, y'all. We need to make sure we understand what he's trying to say here. The people that he was around influenced his behavior because you wasn't raised to use drugs or anything like that, I'm assuming, right?
No.
Right. And I'm not trying to say anything about the people that he was around. I just want to point out that a lot of times, and correct me if I'm wrong, Darren, a lot of times when people end up using drugs, it's because of peer pressure and what they see is going on, right?
They just want to be the cool person.
You just want to be the cool person to be a part of that crowd, right?
Yes.
Okay, so it went from there and you started, and what I'm interested in is when you started and why you started using heroin. And when I say heroin, I'm thinking that you're talking about street drug, right?
Yes.
Did your addiction to heroin start in the streets or did it start in the doctor's office?
It started in a doctor's office.
And when he says, and correct me if I'm wrong, when he says it started in a doctor's office, I'm assuming what you mean is you were prescribed some type of opioid.
Yes.
Okay, tell us about that and why were you prescribed those?
The first time that I was prescribed opiates was when I was going to a doctor because of my back.
Because of your back.
I have serious back problems. Everybody knows that a doctor will tell you whatever they want you to hear just so they can get the money.
So they can get the money. So did you know this doctor, or had you heard about this doctor in the streets? Did you know that this is the doctor to go to get the opioids that you wanted?
Yes, I heard it from a friend of mine.
Yeah. So what happened to your back?
I've got bulging disc.
How did you get bulging disc?
I fell off a concrete wall when I was 8.
And so you've had back problems your whole life?
Yes.
Got it. I got it. Okay. That's sad. Sorry about that. Okay. Now let's stay focused on the story. Let's stay focused on the story. And how long did you deal with the opioids before you end up using heroin?
It was probably about 2 or 3 years.
Really?
Mm-hmm.
Why did you start using heroin?
Because it was cheaper, it was easier to find. I lost my insurance, so the only other thing that I could do was go to work and spend my money on heroin on the street.
Okay, let me say something real quick here for people that may not know. Now I'm gonna let you explain this because you explained it to me pretty good when we talked about this. What is opioids made from?
It's made from a derivative of heroin.
It's made from a derivative of heroin. Mm-hmm. Right. So for a lot of you that may not know, one of the reasons that people that use opioids end up going to heroin because that's what opioids are made from. You see what I'm saying? But opioids are prescribed by the doctors. Heroin is prescribed in the streets, yes, right? I just wanted to make that distinction so people can understand that, right? Now, so how long were you dealing and struggling with your heroin addiction before you got help the first time?
It was probably maybe 2 years at tops, and I went to rehab. First, my wife went to rehab first, and
right.
then
so you and your wife were using together?
Yes.
How did that happen?
It was.
Did you meet her and she was using, or did she meet you? Well, tell us a little bit about that.
See, we had met each other off the internet.
Okay.
In a chat room, and then we met up and we started drinking, and then it led to other drugs like cocaine, ecstasy, and then it led all the way up to the addiction of heroin.
Right. So y'all met off the internet. Was she a user already?
She smoked weed, but that was probably about it.
So, okay, were you already using opioids?
No. You
were not. So both of y'all at this time, when y'all met, y'all were not using opioids.
No.
How did both of y'all end up on opioids?
One night we were at her aunt's house in Cross Plains, and we were riding a 4-wheeler, and we actually wrecked it. She flipped over, and she landed on my shoulder. I broke my collarbone, and she had did something to her wrist. So that later on that night, we went to Hendersonville Hospital, and the doctor prescribed us opioids.
Wow. So y'all ended up being prescribed opioids together. How long before you started going to the streets?
Probably right after that prescription was over with, probably about 21 days.
So they only gave you a 21-day script. Did you have to get surgery on your shoulder, anything like that?
No.
You broke your collarbone? They just straightened it or whatever?
No, really, actually, they gave me a sling, and I put it up in a sling, and then they told me later on that there wasn't nothing wrong with my collarbone.
What? Yeah, our medical system. Okay. They gave you heroin. I mean, they gave you opioids, but they said nothing wrong with the broken. Okay, dig that. So you and your wife on opioids, and then after about 21 days after the prescription ran out. So when you hear us say script, we're talking about a prescription. When the prescription ran out, you ended up going to the streets. You and her together.
Yes.
Okay, dig that. Now, I want you to talk about as much as you're comfortable about, but I want to ask you, how long were you and your wife on opioids? Let me ask you, before you answer that, let me ask you this. Whose decision was it to go to the streets to get this heroin?
It was kind of both of our decisions.
Because you was addicted at that point.
Yes.
And you were looking. You needed something to get the edge off. How did you know heroin would do that?
At first, I didn't even really feel the effect off of heroin.
Yeah. But let me ask you this. I get that. How did you know? I mean, because everybody does not know that opioids are made from a derivative of heroin. I mean, heroin, right? Poppy seed. How did you know that?
I really didn't know that until actually a friend had showed me the heroin and asked me if I wanted to use it. But the only way that you could do the heroin back then was through an IV.
Through an IV.
A needle.
Yeah. So a friend told you that heroin was just as good as opioid, and this is how you have to do it, and so on and so forth.
It gives you the same effect. It puts a warm feeling all over your body. Some people it gives a lot of energy. You know, they don't want to sit still. Just stuff like that.
Yeah, yeah. Okay, and I'm going to get to something that I know it's difficult for you to talk about. So, you gauge how you want to discuss this. But I want my listeners to know how this drug has affected you. We see all the time these pharmaceutical companies on TV making settlements with the various state governments and providing money for detox programs and stuff like that throughout the states. But we don't often hear from the people that are affected the most. You know what I'm saying? By it. You might have a story on TV here and there, but I want you to tell people how this addiction, how this drug affected your family, specifically, if you don't mind.
It affected my family real. It was a real tragedy.
In what way?
Because of my wife, I was incarcerated one day.
Yes.
And at like 8:20, 8:30, they called me down to the sergeant's desk.
Right.
To get on the phone, and when the other person picked up the phone, it was the Nashville morgue.
The morgue.
Yes.
Yeah.
And they wanted me to give them permission to release the body to my mother-in-law and my father-in-law.
And who are we talking about here?
I'm talking about my wife.
Your wife OD'd and died.
Yes.
Yeah. While you were in prison, jail.
Yes.
And what other tragedy have you suffered from the drug?
I actually suffered a lot. I mean, it's the reason why I'm actually in this situation now, because of the drug use and letting the addiction overpower me and just make me think like a real stupid person.
No, you're not stupid, bro. I get that though, why you would say that. But what other family member have you lost due to drugs?
About 3 years ago, I lost my brother due to an addiction that he had.
He overdosed and passed away as well.
He had a combination of Hep C, and he was taking the medication, but yet he was still out there doing heroin, whatever he could get his hands on to get high on.
So you've had two family members to pass away.
Yes.
Yeah. You have kids?
Yes.
How did it affect them?
To this day, it's been 5 years. I still haven't talked to my kids.
Why?
All because they actually blame me for their mother passing away and her being addicted to drugs.
Yeah, yeah. And you shared this story with me. I just wanted you to share it with my listeners. And I know you didn't. I know you're not responsible for that. And one day they're going to know that. You know what I'm saying? So just stay strong on that and don't give in to those demons, man. And but I want you to tell the listeners, how did that affect you when they called you down and that sergeant was telling you that? What happened after that? What did you do when you went back to your room?
I shut down. I didn't want to talk to anybody, all because I lost my best friend.
Yeah.
Somebody that was very important to me. It made me feel like I aged 10 years within a 20-second period.
Right.
I just secluded myself away from everybody.
Yeah. Yeah. Did her death, did your brother's death prepare you to stop using?
No, not really.
You couldn't stop?
No.
So what finally got through to you to make you stop?
Actually coming to prison this time.
You think so? Think coming to prison helped you stop? How so? Because drugs are around and all this stuff, but how did you do it?
Drugs are around, but I also taught myself how to be a stronger person because of what my past has dealt me.
Right.
With being in here and losing family members and all that, I'm a stronger person today.
Yeah. And I'm glad for you too, bro. For real. I'm glad for you. I really am. And I know this was hard. And I want to thank you for doing this. I think it's going to help a lot of people. And Darren's on his way home, y'all. He's on his way home. He has less than 10 days. I think that's right. Less than 15 days. Let's say that. You know, he'll be home eating some steak and some chicken and all of that, you know, and enjoying life, drug free, you know what I'm saying, working. Listen to what I'm saying, y'all. He's going to be drug free and working. And when you see him out there, if you see him out there, lift him up, encourage him, help him, talk to him. Don't be a stranger. This is what the face of heroin, opioids will do to you. You know what I'm saying? This story is a story that people need to pay attention to because it can decimate your family and cause all kind of pain for all kinds of people. But this brother here has found a way to endure and get to the other side of it. There is another way to get through this thing. You know what I'm saying? And you have to find that way for yourself. And there is hope. And if you really need some help, reach out to these facilities that offer the help that you need. Don't do this alone because it's hard. And there is help out there for you. And I want to end this show on that. This has been another episode of Doing Time with Joe. I'm your host, Joe Baker. And Darren, is there anything that you want to say on the way out?
If you have an addiction problem, don't be scared to ask for help. There's help out there everywhere.
Man, dig that. That's how we're going to end it. It's peace, y'all.